like an additional public comment, yeah, come on up.
I may have missed it, but I thought you guys were going to be talking about the addition of the construction waste to the waste ordinance. Did that already pass?
Yeah, yes, I think
got
we
here
did.
too
You know what?
late
You
this
missed your
evening?
shot. I think it was in the garbage.
Right.
Ordinance.
I thought
Right,
those,
it was
all the
in-
ordinance things were at the end. No.
No.
I missed that.
It was,
That was the end, sort of. Sorry, it was right after the Carnahan
Yes.
Place where we were teasing you.
but you know, that's funny because I thought you were going to speak about that.
I was, and I was listening for it, and I didn't hear
It's
it come up.
2017-7.
It was the garbage one. I was looking at
Garbage
you
refuse.
too because I thought you were.
Do you,
Well,
Why don't you
can I
make
make
your
it-
comments
can I
for the record, and then
Okay.
we can take them under advisement if we want to go back in.
and I think, because
Okay.
we did talk about that, we talked about it in our ordinance meeting, and we're aware of the concerns that you have, but, so go ahead. I think you should.
Okay. Sorry, I had sitting there paying attention even. I don't know how I missed that. But anyway, what at first I wanted to just congratulate you guys on, finally incorporating this into the ordinances for Princeton. I think it's very important from an environmental standpoint that we begin to chip away at all the, especially organic material that ends up going into landfill because it goes, they knock a house down and it all goes into a giant dumpster and it just goes to a landfill because none of it's been sorted. And that's, a very bad thing for the climate because all that organic material increases methane in the atmosphere. So I just wanted to thank everyone for, moving that ahead. I did want to make 3 comments. I know that the PEC had made some comments on the ordinance. And we got a response back, although it was a little bit later in the game, and I probably should have reached out to someone once I got the memo, but I didn't see the memo. All I saw was the attachment of the ordinance. So that was kind of my fault for missing that, I guess. But, and I understand there are some regulations that are governed by the UCC, but there were 3 important points in there, and I'd just like council to think about this. One is that, I have a lot of experience on construction sites, large and small, over the course of the last 30 years as an architect. And I've been out on a lot of job sites, and I know how they're run. And if you really put the rules in place, people follow them. But if you're not serious about it, it's just another one of those things that, is brushed aside because it's kind of getting in their way of getting the construction done. They're very focused on getting it done. So since we could not tie this to either permitting or a CO, I thought that at the very least for larger construction projects that probably would come before planning board for site plan approval, just as we have a green development checklist that gets submitted as part of their site plan approval process, and in fact their application is not complete if they have not submitted that green development checklist. We could also be having them submit their recycling plan as part of their application process, and their application would not be deemed complete unless they had submitted that. And that's a way of, making sure that the plan has actually been developed, that somebody had a chance to look at it, and they are really ready to go in terms of recycling. This is particularly important in bigger projects. The second thing is on bigger projects, typical of something like Avalon. And, considering that, we're not thinking about it right now, but I foresee Princeton, there's a lot of pressure for development. There will be many more larger developments that will, whether it's the university or what have you. And these are not just single year developments or construction process. They're multiple year processes. And so to wait all the way till the end to get a report to see how that recycling is going and not require at least a yearly report, I think is a mistake. You want to see that they're actually meeting that 50% goal as they go along. And I've worked on many projects where, because we were really actually trying to achieve a very high goal of recycling, like 90%, we track that almost on a monthly or, every 2-month basis. And the contractors submitting recycling reports so that we can see that. I'm not suggesting that we have the GCs do it on a monthly basis, but it seemed to me that if you're building something over the course of 2 or 3 years, once a year is not too much. And then the last item is the education of the subcontractors. This is vitally important because the way it works, particularly on a larger construction site, is you have a general contractor or a construction manager, and they spend the vast majority, there are project managers who probably are the ones dealing with it, spending the vast majority of their time either in the trailer or in the office, and they're not even on site. Then you have the job super who's running around trying to troubleshoot and make sure all the deliveries are being made and so forth. And you have a variety of subcontractors, electricians, plumbers, mechanical contractors, concrete contractors, demolition contractors, masons, steel workers, you name it. So the list can be pretty long, glazers, it's just on and on. And if each one of them is not aware of what that construction recycling process entails and that they are required to separate their demolition and construction debris, and that there is a logistics plan, here's the dumpster where it's going to landfill, and here are maybe 2 or 3 other dumpsters where this stuff is getting separated. And if you haven't developed some kind of training material and sort of shown that you are talking to these subcontractors, even on a smaller project for a house, you'll have framers, electricians, plumbers, you have all these different tradespeople, and they're coming in at different times. The right hand is not talking to the left hand at all. And so these are the sort of 3 points that I want to make. And these were points that I made, or the PEC made in our comments. Obviously, there wasn't this sort of more elaborate explanation of why we made those comments, but I wanted to share that with you tonight. Now I know you've already voted and everything, but I'd really like council to consider amending this ordinance if at all possible, if it's not too much of a tall order, because I think these points are important, and if we're serious about making this happen, then you have to understand the workings of a job site and understand the workings of contractors and construction in order to make it real. So thank you very much, and thanks again for incorporating this into our, waste disposal ordinance.
Wait, Heidi, can I ask you something? Because someone, I don't remember who it was, I don't know if you told us on the code review, that for construction companies or whoever is doing it, recycling is cost effective. So there's a market incentive for them to do it, so they all do it anyway. Is that?
Yeah, I would say probably you're right for some of the bigger projects. The tipping fees for landfill are very high. So, most of the bigger projects, that's probably true. But there's sort of an educational component that's going on here as well. The fact that we're codifying this and saying you must recycle 50%, and you must talk to hopefully your subcontractors and make sure they're aware of it. Because ideally, I'd like to see this bump up even higher, see this as a first step towards a more aggressive approach to recycling construction and demolition waste. But for the smaller contractors, like I said, I just saw another house go down, I don't know where it was, over by Grover or someplace over there, behind the shopping center. Whole house right into the dumpster,
Would this ordinance apply to that one?
Absolutely.
I mean, with the suggestion that you're making for the checklist, I know that happens at the planning board, so it doesn't happen on smaller projects. So are you?
Well, that was one of the reasons that I wanted to tie it somehow to, say, the inspection process or, CO or permits or something, because it gives it, a little bit more teeth. It makes people really aware that they have to comply with this. Of course, at this point, it'll be more like the enforcement, it'll be more like I drove by and I saw all this stuff going into a single dumpster, and I'm going to call the municipality and say, by the by, I think they're not recycling. Do they have a plan? What the heck's going on over there? And it'll be something like that. But I think the vast majority of Princeton citizens are not going to be that aware. So there's a little bit of an issue here with enforcement from my perspective.
Another recommendation I might make at this point is, I know the PEC is reviewing the green building checklist and seeing how it's used, and it might make sense to have this be part of the green building checklist, or to maybe have a variant of the green building checklist for single family homes. But if I would maybe ask the PEC to take a look at what exactly those provisions would be. Could we put them into the existing green building checklist, and as you go do that review, to incorporate
Yeah.
those
The
provisions?
problem with the green development checklist is it is not a mandatory, the ordinance is very different. An ordinance says you must do this. This is the law of Princeton. You must recycle your construction waste.
Right.
So it's very, very different than the green development checklist. And again, we could put together, say, an educational piece that got handed out to anybody who was pulling a permit. Did you know you're supposed to do this, or something like that? But it doesn't, compel them like the ordinance does.
Okay. Well, thank you. And
I
yeah,
just want to reassure everyone, when Lisa works on these, she works with the relevant staff people. She worked with John Patinotti. And I can't speak to all the details about why it didn't end up in the ordinance, and I don't know whether, Trishka, you can do it, but you should rest assured that if we'd been able to do this, we would have, whether it's a function of enforcement or not being able to require things beyond what the state requires. I'm just not sure, but it's not as if we didn't look at them, and we looked at them with people who understand the issues.
I would say, going back to our goal setting, when we have the list of ordinances that code review is doing, I think it's really important for the work on that committee to make sure it goes through other processes too, because I think we're
It did, Liz.
it went through
it went to
Environmental
PEC.
Commission.
It went to Bob Huff. It went to
okay.
we've looped in everyone, which is why we're approaching the end of 5 years and we're not through them all.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just in response to that.
I think, I'm sorry, it's like we passed the ordinance, and I feel like people are getting it's like,
Okay.
we've gone 20 minutes over on something we've already voted on, so, yeah, but thank you, and your points are well taken, and I think it's important for us to take a look at, are there ways we can incorporate some of those suggestions? And I'd feel personally more settled if we can just make sure that, given that Heidi gave some more detail, maybe that wasn't in the original memo, that we can double check to make sure that. You did, okay. Okay, all right, Mr. Huff? But you have to come up to the mic. You can have the last word.
Oh, man, hey, we got hours.
But apparently we have something that can turn off your mic from here, I think, the new technology.
I'll override it. Yes, we did meet, and there were meetings. Lisa had meetings with us as staff. Jeff was at one or two of them. He's shaking his head no. You were there because I was there. And John was there, so yes, it went through. But I did write a couple things down, and there was a couple valid things. I will go back and look to see that we did.
Hopefully you heard that, Heidi. But there were some things we think we might be able to act on that we're going to look at. Okay, thank you. All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.